I would like, even if I had to color it, it would take me like a year. Like one of his paintings. I don't know how he does that.
Like a lot of detail for his art.
How do you do that?
Okay, next question. So if you were stuck on a deserted island and only had 3 albums, which ones would you take with you? Or which ones would you want with you?
Sublime, 40 Ounce of Freedom. I would need that album. Pearl Jam. Yes, I might take 10. Or like Pink Floyd, maybe. I don't know. It's a kind of a challenging question, but on the spot. And then I'd have to take at least one female musician with me, maybe like Amy Winehouse, Back to Black, or Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill, probably, or Supposed Former Infatuation Junkie.
What was the last one? I never heard her.
Alanis Morissette.
Alanis.
Morissette? Jesus,
Morissette?
really? Damn.
What?
Never heard of Alanis Morissette?
Mm-mm.
So I like to play a game with people where I ask you to name as many female musicians as you possibly can. And I've never had anybody go past like 35. Ever. But if you were to do the same for male musicians, you could get to like 400 in like 10 minutes.
It's pretty easy.
It's insane. It is.
But for females, it is kind of hard.
Alanis Morissette was epic, dude.
Yeah, see, that's something that's the whole point of this podcast is you telling me to listen to different music. So now I have some homework to do. And I'm kind of stoked on it.
Sweet.
Yeah. So your 3 albums would be. So I mean, just the
Sublime.
Yeah, Sublime.
40 Ounce to Freedom. I'll send them to you. Pearl Jam 10, and Alanis Morissette probably Jagged Little Pill. I would say.
Jagged Little what?
Pill.
Yeah, I got a lot of music to listen to. What else?
And that's like I would really need to. It would take me like a week to make that decision clearly, just for the record.
Yeah, but this is just like some albums that are pretty meaningful to you. Also, are there any shows or like movies with like a soundtrack that you really like?
No, none. Yeah.
Really?
I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I was like, damn, you don't like any of the music that they put in movies? That's like probably, or movies or TV show. That's probably where I get a lot of my music.
The first one that comes to mind, because it has a story and it's a podcast, so I'll tell a story, or should I not?
For what?
I have a story in regards to this show.
Please tell
story
me. I just got distracted. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. Anyways, long story short, I was living in London with my family when I was like 16, and Jonathan Davis wrote the score for Queen of the Damned. Jonathan Davis from Korn wrote the score for Queen of the Damned, and my dad brought me the soundtrack back from America because the movie got released in America earlier, like 3 months earlier than it did in London. But Jonathan Davis had a contract where he couldn't be on the record. So he had to get other people to sing for him on all the songs. So I knew all the songs because I listened to the record like 15 times a day. And then, not really, but like twice. And then when I finally did go see the movie in the theater by myself at 16 years old, because nobody would go with me, it was like watching a concert because it was Jonathan Davis's voice singing all the songs on the record that he couldn't sing. So it was like the first time hearing him sing, and I had such a connection to his voice. And it was like the fucking coolest thing ever. It was so cool. I was like, yes, this is the best moment of my life. And I couldn't like high five anyone, which was the worst. But whatever. Yeah. So Queen of the Damned. Jonathan Davis wrote the score.
Wow.
It was very good. That's the most memorable one.
Okay. See, I don't really know like a lot of these, so it's gonna be
I know.
cool.
Well, I'm like, yeah, I'm a really big music buff, and I'm like very all over the place with my taste. So, yeah, mine doesn't make any sense to most people. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of dip into. I'm kind of the same way. I dip into a lot of different genres, so it's kind of hard for me to like make a playlist. But
use a theme like I go like vibe theme or like a lyrical theme or like an instrumental theme.
Yeah,
like,
I started practicing with making these mixes. I got really into the steel pan, and then I made like a steel pan playlist. So that's like
cool.
Really, it turned out really good. Like
cool,
timed out perfectly. Like the beat from like this one song just like rolled over perfectly. So I was so super stoked on that.
Send it.
Yeah,
I want to hear it.
I'll send it to you. I'll release it later.
Okay.
So you said you're a musician too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have struggles like making music, how do you get around that like hurdle?
Honestly, like I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of different hobbies. Like writing and yoga and exercise or other ones that I've worked in. So I do tend to put down the music for like months, sometimes years at a time, and then pick it back up whenever I want. And just like, I write, I don't know. But when I'm like writing a specific piece and I have a hurdle, how do I get through it? Just grit. I mean, just fighting through it, just doing it a million times until I finally get the outcome I'm looking for. Sometimes I'll put it down for a minute, but I'll go right back into it. But again, like when it comes to like the overarching, I put the guitar down for years at a time. Wow. Sometimes. Yeah. But I had a very, very intimate relationship with it when I was like in high school, like that. It was my best friend. So when I pick it up, it doesn't take long for me to like become friends with it again.
Brute force and ignorance. That's the way to live.
Grit. Just like, I am going to get the song right. It was really cool, Albert. When I wrote the song for Timor Leste that I performed at our swear-in, there was one lyric. I was like not 10 minutes. It was like 2 hours before I was going to go perform. And there was one lyric I wasn't okay with. And I was like, damn it, and I just happened to mention it out loud to Maida. And she was like, why don't you just use this word instead? Because in Tetun, right? And I was like, and it rhymed. I was like, thank you. So, I was like losing sleep over this one word. And like, Maida just like randomly comes in and is like, oh, just try this word. I'm like, that's perfect. Like, why didn't I think of that? So yeah, brute grit. And then, yeah, like, I guess that's a good point though, is like, sometimes things are not going to be perfect. Like I strive for perfection, but when it comes to writing songs, like sometimes when I put enough hours in at the end of it, I'm just like, you know what? I put in 30 hours on this song. I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, this is it. This is as good as it's going to get, like, I'm not trying to make it the best in the world. I'm just trying to get it done at that point.
Okay. There's something called wabi-sabi in Japanese culture. Yeah, it's let me pull it up. So in traditional Japanese aesthetics, wabi-sabi is a worldview centered on the acceptance of I cannot read.
Transience.
Transience and imperfection. So, yeah, nothing has to be perfect all the time. You kind of just embrace like all those imperfections with like life and the art that you make.
That's kind of my style, actually. Interesting that it's like, well, I'm not always, but I do tend to embrace that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's like my favorite thing about it. I always like try to remind myself that, yeah, wabi sabi. Like even if it's just total garbage, I'm just gonna put it out there. Like this podcast is not that great. I'm probably not gonna edit it too well.
I'm just gonna put it out there
because wabi sabi, you know.
It's not just. I mean, yes, and it's a good approach to take. In my opinion, because if you try and be a perfectionist about everything, then like
it's really hard.
I've you know how many things that I've started and I've just never released because I was like, nope, it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have so much art that's just sitting in boxes because I'm not good enough in my own mind. Like that's a travesty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like it should just be out in the world. Like why not? Who cares? Somebody doesn't. I was just listening to Rob Zombie today on Joe Rogan, and he was like, critics have hated every single thing I've done. Like
his
in
movies.
the reviews, like it when it first got released, but now like he's really successful and all of his records and movies are like critically acclaimed, like cult classics. And it's like, but initially these critics are like, it sucks, it's terrible.
It's so crazy. So I listened to a part to like one section. It was the one where he was working at Universal Studios, and then they were like, "Yeah, we don't like it," because it was he was like such a early adopter of like horror films that it really wasn't a thing, and then he created the whole like.
There's a House of a Thousand Corpses, like tribute in the park now, even though they wouldn't produce the movie.
It's so like that's wild. So I don't know. It's just better to get your work out there rather than because you might start something new. You know, like this might be the new trend. So
yeah,
I
think so.
Just put it out there and hope for the best.
Just do it, man. Wabi sabi style. I should write a song called Wabi Sabi for you.
That would actually be cool. I was thinking about making like some wabi sabi like clothing. Just got like a shirt that has like wabi sabi printed on it, and or a hat that says wabi sabi. I'm pretty sure it exists, but
I was thinking about wabi sabi when I was explaining my creative process to you. I didn't even realize it, but I'm looking at the bowl. You know how they put the bowls back together with gold?
With gold.
Yeah, have you ever seen that? It's called a failure bowl. So when a bowl breaks or when any piece of ceramic, they'll put it back together with gold because I guess the philosophy is that it makes it better. When the gold makes it better, and like when you broke it and put it back together, it made it now have a story, or like it has lived a life. You know, like more special. Which I think is so cool. Yeah. I had that image in my head when
I love like things that are kind of like broken, you know? It's kind of like worn in, kind of like vintage clothing. Like that's a trend. Like it's used really old clothes, but people love it. You know?
Yeah.
So weird. And like people with like vintage cars that are all broken and like well loved. Still
vinyl.
Cool.
I mean, like I was a brat when I was a DJ. Usually I would only ever like DJ shows my preference was with vinyl. I was like, I'll show up, but I will only spin vinyl. So you're not going to get what you want. You're going to get what I have in my collection. Mm-hmm. So, but it's because it has